Amud Yomi, Tractate Beitzah, page 14b, top of the page with the words Rava Amar. Rava Amar lo kashye halan v'halahu. Rava said this is not difficult. The Beitzot do not contradict one another. This ruling, which permits a small mortar and pestle. Remember, there's a disagreement of saying pestle or pestle. So maybe I'll say both. Mortar and pestle. Mortar and pestle. Okay. All right. Is for us the residents of Babylonia who do not have servants. That statement is for them, the inhabitants of Eretz Israel, who have many servants. Since servants might treat the prohibition lightly by using a large mortar and pestle, and claiming they had used only a small one, they are prohibited from pounding in all cases. Rav Papi ikla lebe mashmuel, aisile daise v'lo achal. V'dirma b'machteshes ketana v'udua dichaze tehave daeg tefe. The Gemara relates Rav Papi happened to come on a festival to the house of Mar Shmuel. Doesn't say what festival, but okay. He brought to him porridge made from wheat groats, but he did not eat it, out of concern that the wheat might have been pounded on the same day. The Gemara asks him, perhaps they performed the pounding. Well, he could have just asked them. Why didn't he ask them? Was it pounded today or not? After all, he went to Mar Shmuel's house. We're not talking about just regular people. He would have trusted his opinion. Okay. There's always these little technical questions that never really get answered, but, they always form, every time I read these type of stories, there's all these little details that don't make sense. But in any case, he brought to him porridge made from wheat groats, but he did not eat it, out of concern that the wheat might have been pounded on the same day. The Gemara asked him, perhaps they performed the pounding with a small mortar and pestle. And they permit, maybe I'll switch off every time. Pestle, pestle. Pestle, pestle. Mortar and pestle. In a permitted manner. The Gemara answers, this cannot be the case, as he observed that it was well ground, which cannot be achieved by means of a small mortar and pestle. V'dilma mi'esmo l'abdua tichadina v'galim etzate tzare v'ibaitema shani be'ma shmuel dika peritzuta diavide. The Gemara asks if perhaps they prepared the day before, on the festival eve. The Gemara answers this cannot be, as he observed that the husks of the groats were bright, an indication that they had been prepared recently. And if you wish, say instead that he refrained from eating for another reason, because the house of Mar Shmuel is different, as he had slaves, and slaves are lax with regard to prohibitions. Therefore, Mar Shmuel ought to have prohibited all forms of grinding in his house to ensure that no one grind anything in an inappropriate manner. Okay, now new Mishnah. Sagt der heilige Mishnah, Beurer kitten jois beyond tov, Beshami oimrim, Beurer oichel oichel, Weisile oimrim, Beurer kedar ko bechekoi, Bakonoin, Utamkoi, Avalo betavlo, Velo bechaboro, Rabban Gamliel omer, Af mediach beshoile. The Mishnah says, with regard to one who selects legumes on a festival by separating the edible and inedible portions, Beis Shammai say he may select food and eat it immediately, while leaving the refuse, and Beis Hillel say he may select in his usual manner, in his lap with a tray, or with a large vessel, but he may not do so with a tablet, nor with a winnow, nor with a sieve, as these vessels are specially designed for selecting, which gives his action the appearance of a weekday activity. Rabban Gamliel says, one may even wash the legumes in water and skim off the refuse, floating on top. Okay. Gemara. Zog the Hilga Talmud. Tanya Rabban Gamliel. Bamed devam amorim. Keshoich menoval ala pesoiles. Al pesoiles menoval oichel. Divrei hakoil. Noiti les oichel uminiach. It is taught in Beitzah. Rabban Gamliel said, in what case is this statement said? Under what circumstances did Beit Hillel permit the removal of the refuse in the weekday manner of selecting in a case where the quantity of food is greater than the quantity of the refuse? However, if the quantity of refuse is greater than the quantity of food, everyone agrees that one must remove the food and leave the refuse. He must refuse the refuse. Psoiles miruba oichel miko mandishoi. Lo yitzricho denofish betircha bezuta b'shiura. The Gemara asks if the quantity of refuse is greater than the quantity of food, is there an opinion that permits it since the smaller amount of food is nullified by the refuse? The entire mixture is considered muktzeh and may not be removed. The Gemara answers no. It is necessary to state this halachim in a case where the removal of the refuse is greater in terms of effort, and yet it is smaller in size. In other words, there is actually more food than refuse, but since greater effort is required to move the refuse, it is preferable to remove the food. Rabban Gamliel Omer, Ahmed Yehoshua, Tanyo, Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok. כך היה מנהגון של בייס רבן גמליאל, שהיו מביאים דלים עלי אדושים ומציפין עליו. The Mishnah taught that Rabban Gamliel says one may even wash the legumes. Mitzifin alav, maim, v'nimtza oichel lemat psoilis lemala. The Mishnah taught that Rabban Gamliel says one may even wash the legumes in water and skim out the refuse floating on top. It is taught in Tosefta Beitzah 1. Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Tzadok, said, this was the custom of the house of Rabban Gamliel, that they would bring a bucket full with lentils and pour water in it, and that the food would sink down, and the refuse would float up, which spared them from having to separate the lentils from the refuse manually. The Gemara asks, but isn't the opposite on another Beitzah? That the food rose to the top while the refuse sunk below? The answer is it is not difficult. This Beitzah, which says the refuse sinks down, is referring to refuse in the form of earth, which sinks down below the lentils. That Beitzah, where it is stated that the refuse arises, speaks of straw which floats on water. By the way, today is Thursday. Lentils, Thursday, lentils. Mishnah, so the Heilige Mishnah. It's a new Mishnah. Beishama oimrim mishalchem yom tov el amanos ubeis hillel oimrim mishalchin behem ochai v'oif v'imchayin bein shechutin mishalchin yeinois shemanim uselatos v'kidnios. The Mishnah says, Beit Shammai say, one may send only portions of prepared food on a festival, but not any other gifts. And Beit Hillel say, one may even send gifts of domesticated animals, undomesticated animals, and fowl, whether alive or slaughtered. Similarly, one may send wines, oils, and vessels of flour, and even legumes, but not grain, which is unfit for use, as one may not grind it on the festival. And Rabbi Shimon permits sending gifts, even in the case of grain, as it can be made into porridge without being ground. That's the Mishnah, and now for the Gemara. Tani Rav Yechiel, Umilvan shelo yasin b'shura, Tana in shura b'sucha b'sholosh b'nei adam, b'shlosha b'nei adam, Boi Ravashi telosa gavrei utelosa minei mai. Rav Yechiel teaches, and one may send these items provided that he does not do it by means of it was a teku. Okay? So again, Tana Rav Yechiel, B'shu Yisrael, B'shu Tana, Ein Shur B'shu B'shu B'nei Adam, Boi Ravashi telosa gavrei utelosa minei mai teku. Okay? Rav Yechiel teaches, and one may send these items provided that he does not do it by means of a convoy of people, as they would look as though they were transporting merchandise to the marketplace. It is taught in the Beitzah, a convoy consists of no less than 3 people. If there are fewer than 3, it is not called a convoy, and is permitted. Rav Ashi raised a dilemma. In a case of 3 people and 3 different types of food, what is the halacha? Is this considered a convoy, or does the fact that there are 3 different types of food mean that each of them is considered a separate item? The answer is teku. The dilemma shall stand and resolve until the coming of the Messiah, the son of David and the son of Joseph. Indeed, they are the same. The dilemma shall stand and resolve as no answer was found. Okay? Beitzah. Rabbi Shimon matir b'tfuo, Tanya Rabbi Shimon matir b'tfuo, Kegoin, Chitin la'asois me'en ludiois, Se'oirim, Litein lefnei behemtai, Adashim la'asois b'hen rasisin. Or maybe it's rasisin. The Mishnah taught that Rabbi Shimon permits the sending of grain. It is taught in Beitzah that Rabbi Shimon permits the sending of grain, for example, wheat, to prepare it from ludiot, a type of cookie, barley to place before his animal, or lentils to prepare from the resisin, a dish made from crushed lentils. That's that, and let's do the Gemara, new Mishnah. Zog the Heilige Mishnah. Bishalchin keinem in Tefurin, ben shenen Tefurin, Yachol pi sheyesh ben kleim, Hein etzoyach al moed, אבל לא סנדל על מסומר, ולא מינהל שאין תפור. רב יהודה אומר, אף לא מינהל לובון, אף לא מינהל לובון, מפני שצורך אומן. זה הכלל. כל שני אויסין בוי ביום טוב, משלחין אויסוי. One may send clothes, whether they are sewn or whether they are unsewn, even if they contain diverse kinds. A prohibited mixture of wool and linen, shatnas, but one may do so only if they serve purposes of the festival. However, one may not send a spiked sandal, which has nails fixed to it, as the sages decreed. That one may not wear a sandal of this kind on Shabbat or festival, nor an unsewn shoe, which is not suitable for a festival. Yehuda says one may not even send a white shoe, which people do not usually wear because it requires an artisan to paint it black. This is the general principle. Anything that one may use on a festival, one may send it. That's the Mishnah, and now we start the Talmud. Zog the Gemara, Bishlam tefurin, Chazu lemalbush, Shein tefurin, Nami, Chazu ilchasu el aklaim, Namai Chazu. The Gemara asks a question. Let me ask you a question. We're asked the question, granted, is it permitted to send 7 sewn clothes? Is it permitted to send sewn clothes as they are suitable for wearing? With regard to clothes that are not sewn as well, they are at least suitable for covering oneself, but in the case of clothes that contain diverse kinds, for what use are they suited? Since these clothes may not be used on a festival, why is it permitted to send them? לא יעלה עליך, אבל אתה יכול להציע תחתיך. אבל אמרו חכמים, Asur lasot ken shema tichrech lo nima al besaro. And if you say the clothes of diverse kinds are suited for one to place underneath himself, but isn't it? It's Tanab, right? So neither shall there come upon you a garment of diverse kinds. Leviticus 19:19. This verse teaches that one may not wear this garment, but by Torah law you may spread it beneath you. However, the sages said it is prohibited to do so lest the thread, anima, wind itself around its flesh. This shows that the sages prohibited even spreading underneath oneself a cloth that contains a mixture of wool and linen. Amar Mishua ben Levi, Amar Rav Yossi ben Shaul, Amar Rabbi Mishum Kol Kedisha de Yerushalayim. And if you say that the allowance, Yerushalayim afilu eser mitzoi zo agabe zo v'chlayim tachtehen asul yishan aleim mishum shenemar lo yal alecha. And if you say that the allowance of cloths of diverse kinds is referring to a case where there is something separating between them, meaning one may place a garment of diverse kinds beneath another object. But didn't Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi say that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, that Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul said, that Rabbi Yehuda Nazi said, in the name of the sacred congregation of Jerusalem? Aye. Let's see. Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, Yehoshua ben Levi, Yossi ben Shaul, of the holy congregation in Jerusalem. Yeah. Even in the case of 10 mattresses placed on top of another, and a cloth of diverse kinds and underneath them is prohibited to sleep on them, as it is stated, neither shall there come upon you. Leviticus 19:19. Ela bevilon, ve'omer ula mipnei ma movilon, tamei mipnei she'ashamash mitchamem kenegdo. Rather, the Mishnah is referring to a curtain, a vilon of different kinds, which may be hung up, as it is not an item of clothing. The Gemara challenges this, but didn't Ula say for what reason the sages say that a curtain is ritually impure, meaning that it can contract the impurity of a vessel despite the fact that it is not directly used by people, because the attendant warms himself with it. Since attendants use curtains as makeshift blankets when they are cold, a curtain may not be made of a mixture of wool and linen.